Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Move Forward Anyway podcast, featuring dream accelerating inspiration. I'm Jeff Meyer, your host, author, entrepreneur, and coach. My goal with this podcast is to help you identify and clarify your own dream by taking wisdom from others' successes and challenges. If you're looking to take action on your dream, to make a difference doing something you love, but your fears are holding you back, then this podcast is for you. If you're interested in finding additional support, you can also check out my Dream Accelerator coaching program designed to help realize your full potential and reshape your future. As always, you can learn more about my Dream Accelerator program at jeffmeyer.org. Using my Dream Accelerating formula, heart-centered entrepreneurs can focus on their dream, name their fears, change their mindset, define their next, and move forward anyway. Welcome back, fellow dreamers. It's exciting to be with you again for another podcast to Move Forward Anyway. And I am so excited to let you listen in on a reconnecting conversation with someone that used to work on our team at the church. Man, Tami, what was that, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
A lot has happened since then in both our lives, and I am so grateful for the time you're giving us today to share a little bit about your heart, your entrepreneurial ventures that you are about. And without further ado, let me just say, Tami, thank you for joining us. Why don't you take a moment just to introduce yourself with whatever you're comfortable, however you're comfortable introducing yourself to the audience today.
Okay. Well, I'm Tami Fleming, and as Jeff said, I worked for him as an office manager many, many years ago. Pulled a few pranks on him, actually. Just to let you know, pastoral work can be a lot. So it's good to laugh every once in a while when it's appropriate. So, since then, that was 20 years ago when I had my first daughter. I stepped away from that work and was home with her. And she's going to be 20 in a few months, or 2 months. Yep. So time flies. I think I even babysat for your girls when they were super little.
Yes, you did. And you allowed us to use a cabin up north for vacation that my kids still talk about.
Oh, it's my folks' cabin. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very sweet about sharing with pastors. So, anyway, so I did that 20 years ago and had 2 daughters, ended up getting divorced, and my husband and I shared custody. And because of that, when the girls were gone, it was a little too quiet at home. And so I started volunteering at St. Mary's Hospital, actually, in the emergency room. And because I'm a farm kid, so I don't mind getting my hands dirty, and wanted to just do something practical to help other people. And one time when I was in the hospital emergency room, the police had brought in someone and they put her on a gurney and soft cuffs, and she was very physically ill and very mentally ill, having a psychotic break. And she looked a lot older than she was, I'm sure, because that happens when people live outside, but she's probably around my mom's age. And she was crying out and talking to people I didn't see or didn't know. And she was wheeled into the room. And one of the things I would do when I was volunteering there is I'd go and sit with people who came in alone, so they could have, if they needed something before the doctor came in, or just to kind of put their minds at ease so they weren't feeling vulnerable and by themselves. Or I'd entertain kids who came in with a parent or whatever was needed. And so they said, "Oh, you don't have to go in there." And I was like, "Oh, I'll go in there." That's okay. And I went in and was talking to her, and she didn't make eye contact with me. I didn't think she really knew I was there. And I just said to her, can I get you something to drink? Are you thirsty? Do you need a pillow? Are you warm enough? And she didn't respond. And I was just looking at this woman, and she just, in that moment, my heart just broke for her because she was just so alone. and so sick. And she had her face was very dirty. You could see little streaks where the tears were coming down from her kind of crying out. And I just pulled the chair off the hook on the wall and sat next to her, and I just prayed in my head. I'm like, God, this isn't right. This just isn't right. What can I do for this poor woman? Is there anything I can do for this woman? God, please help this woman. And she turned and looked at me in that moment. And I was not praying out loud. This was just in my head. Yeah. She turned and looked at me for the first time and said, you got to tell God to help me. I can't take this no more. And that was just like a spiritual swift kick to the head moment for me. I didn't want to ever see someone suffer like that again in my presence without doing something practical. And I felt like that was God saying, hey, get off your butt and do something about this stuff. Messing around with this or that, just do something. You can do something. Something needs to be done. And so the next day I Googled homelessness in Madison and started kind of researching things, and found a Facebook group that this was back when Facebook was new, Facebook group that was going to go bring food down to people on State Street. And I joined that, and they all kind of assigned different things, and I signed up to bake cookies. I baked 13 dozen cookies the night before, because anything worth doing is worth overdoing, right? So,
yeah, right.
Yeah, I had them all bagged up and ready to go in a bunch of ice cream pails, and then everybody chickened out on the Facebook page. And I'm like, well, I said I was going. I baked all these darn cookies. I'm going. So I made sandwiches and got some fruit and filled up a bunch of big shopping bags with things, and parked like by Peace Park, which is on the 500 block of State Street, and started heading my way up to the top of State Street. And I was just praying in my head. I'm like, God, whatever it is that I'm supposed to do, I feel like I'm supposed to do something. Please let me know what to do. Please, I want to help someone in a practical way. Just after seeing that,
yeah,
just shortly before that, I just felt like so morally wrong. I wanted to do something for people who are suffering like that. And so I walked up there and I met a whole bunch of people behind the Veterans Museum. And some of them were homeless veterans, ironically, and just talked to them, shook hands, started passing out food. And I asked them, is this a good time to come to bring food? And they said, yeah, actually, it's a really good time, because when I had gotten there, it was like when the farmer's market was clearing out. And so there were plenty of parking spaces, not so much foot traffic. And it was also a big gap between the meals that they could get anywhere free. So I said, okay, well, I'll be here again next week. And I was there again. And I went every single Saturday from that point on for like 7 years. And then once the Beacon opened, we started bringing food to the Beacon that same day, to get those folks to come down to the Beacon and get help. That's how Friends of the State Street family started. It wasn't intentional. It was a total God thing. Mm-hmm. I'm a planner. I like to be a planner. I was an office manager.
Yep.
/ control freak.
And a very good one, by the way.
Thanks. And I've been an executive assistant, and so you're used to planning things out and not having surprises and being prepared for any situation that might come up. And God really taught me a lot, because I was a single mom living in a little apartment, and I was somehow coming up with enough food to feed up to 200 people out of my little apartment kitchen, which was like a little hallway kitchen.
Yeah.
And there were times I would run out of money, but I felt like God, I had to do it myself first before I asked anyone else to do it. Before I asked anyone to join me or help me, I had to be willing to commit myself to doing it and be faithful to it and see what happened. And it's like, I always had a little bit of reserve. I always had my emergency fund, except once I broke an axle on my Jeep, and that just sucked every cent I had. And I am half stubborn Norwegian, so I would never ask for help out loud at that time. So I had like no money, and it was Friday night, and I remember driving home. I was working at MG&E as an executive assistant at that time. I drove home and I pivoted and went over to Blackhawk Church where I was attending, and they have this prayer room that's like a really tall, it's like you're inside of a steeple. There's 4 chairs. It's, not a big room, but it's super tall and you can see all around. And I went over there and had an absolute screaming, crying fit at God. And just finally, just had to let it go. And I finally just said, well, this is your thing. You figure it out at the end. Because I didn't want to cry in front of my kids, my girls, and freak them out. They were still pretty little. Yeah. And, I was trying to keep it together, but I felt like I had promised these people I'd be there every Saturday, and I couldn't be one more person who let them down, because they're really starting to trust me and tell me their stories more. And the ministry was starting to grow. We started doing midnight runs and started doing other things, street outreach from that. And I the next morning, Saturday morning, I went down to get my mail, and I did not tell anybody that I had no money. And there was an envelope in my mailbox that had no address on it, just said on the front, "For your State Street family." On inside, there was like 3 $100 bills. And it was enough to get the food and do everything I needed to do. I was just mostly doing sandwiches and chips and bananas and things like that at that time. But it was something for people, and it was a way to connect with them. And so by connecting with them and being faithful and showing up week after week, people started to trust me with their stories. And I just hear these heartbreaking stories of trauma and abuse and violence. And I mean, almost every person that I would hear a story of was close with someone who was, killed by violence. And that's just not something that was normal to me or that I grew up with. And so I just really started to learn more about trauma and how to help people who are dealing with trauma. And we found that connecting with them in a practical way was the best thing that we could do, is just giving them something that was practical that they needed, being faithful, and then they began to trust and open up to us. And from that, we're able to get so many people housed because a lot of the people who had, some of the more extreme cases of mental illness or addiction would never walk into a social service agency and ask for help. Yep. They'd rather eat out of the garbage. And so we could bring the case managers to them and get them the help that way and get them into apartments. So, and God really blessed me through that. I mean, it was not easy. Oh my gosh, I really had to learn to trust him. I have a friend who's a Pastor Hope Bennett, and she was one of the people who helped start the ministry that I'm here at now. And she always says, if it's God's will, it's God's bill. So,
if it's God's will, it's God's bill.
Yeah. And being a single mom who had to pay the bills for her kids by herself and had to get things together. And I just felt, I always felt that need to control that and like know where the money was going to always go. And boy, I really learned to just trust God, and the right people would show up. The things that we needed would show up. I mean, there was even a time at MG&E when I was working, someone brought me a brand new pair of little boys' moon boots, those moon boots for winter boots, and I didn't see a lot of children, especially in the wintertime, outside. So I was like, well, thank you very much. And I put them in the back of my truck. And the next day I was at East Washington and Milwaukee Street, where there's a laundromat, and a lot of people would go in the laundromat and do some laundry that were homeless or living in their cars and hang out there because it was warm, and I went in there to check on people, and there was a small woman who was just crying and her feet were bleeding, and she had walked like from Shopko all the way there and with leaky boots that didn't fit her right, and her feet were just like hamburger. And I always brought a medical kit in the back of my car or back of my truck, and I brought it, and I had some new socks. And I just looked at those moon boots and I grabbed them just in case. And they were exactly the right size for her. And
Like a glove, right?
it's just, yeah, that's just like,
Oh
she was like,
man.
even at the end, she was jumping up and down. She's like, oh, these are wonderful. I love these. And, these are perfect. And I just said, well, hey, honey, those are obviously a gift from God for you, because I never have things like this in the back of my car. And so, that
There's
was,
so many.
we get those little winks from God, like, hey, you're
Yeah.
doing what I want you to do.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. I'll take care of what you need.
I love that, little winks from God.
Yeah.
That I am so moved by that story of how this started. You didn't start out with a dream to help those who are struggling with homelessness. You started out in a painful moment in your life, trying to give back to community and do something with the time, right? That was available to you because the kids weren't with you, because of the divorce, which you never planned on, you never wanted, but there it was, and you just started volunteering. And because of your compassionate heart, which you've always had, which God has put in you, you had compassion on a woman that sparked a movement in Madison. It's a movement. Friends of State Street Families continues, and it's a movement to help people and to advocate for them. And it's become a movement of positive change and influence in our city. And all because when you had the opportunity, when that nurse or whoever it was said, well, you don't have to go in there, you went in there. And look what's happened as a result of that. That is just, I guess for the listener here, is sometimes maybe you're listening and you don't even know what your dream is. You don't even know what difference you could make. One of the things you could do is just volunteer somewhere. The other thing is, I noticed in your story is all along the way, you were asking, God, show me what you want me to do. Show me the next step. Lead me to the people that I can help. And he did. And also crying out in frustration and in maybe even a little bit of anger. God can handle that. And it again, you submitted to him, you surrendered it. You said, it's yours. These are your people. Help me. And he has done that. As you think about those 7 years of volunteering and then the launching of the organization, Friends of State Street Family, what would be some of the top lessons you've learned about, and I'm going to use this word, entrepreneurship, because what you did there is you started a movement of compassion. And I think most of the people listening to this podcast have a compassionate heart. They have a heart-centered dream. It's not just about making money. It's not just about becoming rich. It's not just about having the vacation home. Most of the dreams I help people with are with heart-centered entrepreneurs that want to make a difference. And they don't really know how to get started. They don't really know sometimes what the dream is. It's not crystal clear. What are the lessons you've learned that might help someone who's sitting here listening today going, I want to make a difference too, like Tami has?
I think the thing a lot of people have said to us, because it's still going, and I've stepped down from leadership about 3 years ago, because we had really great leaders that had come up, and my heart in that ministry was more direct outreach. I didn't want to go to meetings and do planning. That wasn't where my heart was. So I was happy to just kind of step back and let them handle all the money stuff. And I think just the thing that kept all of these volunteers that were from all different walks of life and different beliefs. So we had people from all different types of churches and synagogues. We even had a Buddhist temple come and want to serve, and just different organizations. And it was just, as long as it was all about the people, we just kept it about the mission and helping people who were suffering. And I didn't proselytize, but I wore my cross. so people kind of could get where I'm coming from. And people would ask me about it sometimes, and sometimes people would say, "You're not going to make me pray first before you give me a sandwich." No, no, I respect you, and I, care about you. If that's something you ever want, I'm there for it. But if that's not what you're interested in, that's not what faith's about. I just care about you, and I want you to be okay. And it's just like you could see people kind of relax after that. And I think what I've learned, first of all, trust God, because if you're doing what he wants you to do, he will show up. He will show up and he will make it work.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have, I came from a place where I thought I had to know everything and be able to do everything by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't ask for help because that would mean I couldn't do it. And that's not who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to work with our brothers and sisters because none of us can do all this alone. And we're
you showed up with some pails of cookies.
Yeah. For a while they were calling me the cookie lady.
The cookie lady. Yeah. I love that.
But I kind of had two rules before we ever really got to be organized. It was just people. I would talk about what the people that I would meet on Facebook without like necessarily outing their names, just maybe their street name or nickname, and just how beautiful how generous they were with like their last dollar, or how appreciative they would be. And people would say, "Oh, I want my kids to experience that." And so people started coming out that way. And that's kind of how God had it unfold. And I think that the rules were, because I thought, well, I want to make sure everybody serves people in a really kind and in a kind way, because I've seen, and people have told me that it was different to eat when we would serve food, because in some places you get just like half a scoop and people would kind of look at you and you could tell they didn't want to be there. And I did actually myself spend a weekend on State Street as a homeless person, just to kind of understand it better. I had somebody with me that would, so I was safe. I wasn't a fool about it, but I had $5, my cell phone, and a sleeping bag and backpack, and was there from Friday night through Sunday night. And I learned a lot about having to get help and how humiliating it can feel. And so we kind of ended up growing what we do around that, and just doing things in a very respectful and humane way. And so when we served food on State Street, the rules were treat everybody like you're welcoming a family member into your own home. And if you don't want to be there, don't be there. Because people can feel that. And so, and then we would just never stay on one side of the table. We would, there were always people in walkers and wheelchairs and people with lots of little kids in tow. So we would have people that kind of were designated to run around the other side and carry plates for them and help them load up the plates and carry things. Or if somebody was too intoxicated, I'd help them go sit down, and I just said, "What do you want? I'll make you a plate. I'll bring it to you," and then sit with them and eat with them and talk to them, just have a real conversation. And then we started, then one day I was asking a man if he wanted a sandwich, and he was I had two friends with me that had never done outreach before, and they were a little intimidated. He looked really tough, big, tall, weathered, older African-American man that had obviously been outside for a long time. And he had just a very, the look on his face wasn't like, "Hey, come on over," but I said, "Sir, can I bring you something to eat? Are you hungry at all?" And I just reached out my hand and said, I'm Tami. What's your name?" And he started weeping. This big, tough guy started to cry. And I'm like, "Are you okay? Do you need something?" And he's just said, "Thank you for seeing me."
Yeah. Someone recognized his name. Someone asked for his name, right?
You just treat, why wouldn't you treat a person who's experiencing homelessness like any other person that you'd meet? I don't understand that. So, but I shook his hand, and then I asked him if I could give him a hug, and I gave him a hug. And then from then on, I started hugging people. When they come, I'd stand at the front of the line. I'm like, "Do you need a hug today?" And I love doing it. And there were some people who would just stand in line to get a hug because it's the only time all
Human
week that
contact.
anyone would touch them.
Yeah.
And just, I would say, I care about you. How you doing, honey? We'd try to remember, if we knew someone had a birthday, if they made a point to make a big deal about telling us, we'd get a cupcake with a candle in it and meet them somewhere and bring them a happy birthday. And the girls and I would sing them happy birthday. And it was I still have guys who remember us doing that when the girls were little. But it was just about being present in the moment and looking to, showing people, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
You matter, and so, and from that, I really felt when I was doing that, after every food run, I would be driving home because something really cool would have happened each time, and I'd be driving home and I would be so excited. I would just be so energized and jazzed up. And I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what God wants me to do. This is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm born to do. I don't see, apparently people were telling me most people don't do that. And most people don't, treat or see people who are experiencing homelessness the same as everybody else. And I'm like, that was a foreign concept to me that would be the case. But obviously God made me this way for a reason. And so I was passionate about it. And from there, all of the Friends of State Street stuff grew, but it all grew organically through God stuff. I did not sit down and make a 10-year plan, which is what I would have wanted to do.
But you did grow into understanding. We talk a lot about this in the Dream Accelerator, that you grew into an understanding of your who you were there to serve, and who they were, name by name, person by person, face by face. And you had compassion for your who. And you began to get clearer and clearer on your why you were there, what the calling was. And so that got solidified in you. And so then you started inviting, I just took some notes down on what I'm learning by listening to you. Trust God, know your who and your why. And then you asked for help. You invited people to participate with you on your dream. You didn't do it alone. It grew because you allowed other people, beginning with your daughters, but then you allowed others to come in and participate.
Oh yeah.
And you made simple rules to allow people to serve the way that you needed them to serve to be a part of this movement. And you kept it simple. So those are lessons I learned just listening to you. And that's awesome. And if you're listening to this podcast, it doesn't take long before you can start to understand your who and your why, and you can invite people to participate with you and use their gifts and keep the engagement rules simple so that they can actually come along and help you with what you're trying to do in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing when you're working in the area that God kind of gifted you in. All of a sudden, maybe for the first time ever, it's amazing. You'll find the people who also are attracted to doing that are your peeps.
Yes.
They're like your people they get you. Because I could go home and tell, and I love my family and my parents were all very close, but I could, before my mom and dad actually came out with me and saw me working in this element and saw this is what you're supposed to be doing. They were like worried, this is dangerous. You're going out there by yourself, or what are you doing? Do you have something? Do you have pepper spray? They were just worried about that stuff because they're parents and parents worry. And I would tell them what I was doing. And it was just like, oh, that sounds terrible. And so I didn't really have people to talk to about it until all these folks who also had that same heart joined, and those are still my people. That you just get each other, you just get it. It's not about me or anything. It's about just being able to do something real for someone in the moment when they really need something.
Yeah.
Providing that
you have all along the way, you've had detractors, you've had people saying you shouldn't do this. It's just going to keep I followed some of those conversations, and one of the things I noticed that you did very well to engage people and allow them entry points into the ministry is you posted on your Facebook group, you just shared stories, and your passion, your passion, you talk about driving home after being down there serving and caring and eating and conversing and hearing stories. You came back home on cloud nine. You're like, this was so exciting. And you would post something on Facebook and you could feel the excitement. So share your story, share the engagement with people, share the reality of your work and how it's impacting the who's that you're designed to help. And you started to attract all kinds of other people that wanted to serve alongside of you.
Yeah. And 5 years ago, something really cool happened. I mean, it wasn't all cool, but something really cool came out of it. I ended up actually being diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. And I'm fine now. I'm in remission. It's been 5 years. Everything's good. But when that happened and I had to go through treatment, I had to step back from doing outreach, which was my passion, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I met with like the most faithful of the group of volunteers that was constantly, and I just let them know what was going on. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do anything for at least this many months because I'm going to have compromised health and I'm going to be really tired. I don't know exactly how things are going to turn out. Can you guys step up? And that is when like Friends of the State Street family like quadrupled in size. Because a lot of times when you're the founder, I think people are afraid to step on your toes and, oh, you know what's best and this is your thing. And I'm like, it's not the Tami show. this is, friends that we're all are, you don't have to have a Ph.D. in social work to be able to help someone in a practical way that's experiencing homelessness. You do something practical and you just listen. You ask them questions about what they're talking about and try to understand where they're coming from. And if there's something practical they need, be that person for them. I mean, I've been that person when people have had to go in to get surgery and listed as their emergency contact because they had no one.
Yeah.
I've stood up in weddings for people. I'm godmother to a lot of babies. There were a lot of teenagers when I first was out there that would call me Mama T. And then when I was working at the Beacon years later, they'd bring their families to see me and say, hey, Mama T, I finally got my act together. And this is my baby and my wife, and I want you to meet them. And it just
awesome.
It was like, I was so blessed. Here I was when I was volunteering in the hospital. And I'll be honest, I was bitter when I got divorced. I was really angry and felt sorry for myself. I mean, I was with my husband for 20 years and all of a sudden he's done, and felt like I was Miss Nice Girl in the divorce. And then afterwards I was like, well, he has all this and this, and I've got nothing. And I felt sorry for myself, and I just started to kind of pull inward. And when that spiritual swift kick to the head happened, it was like all the energy, all of my stuff just kind of turned outward. And like, here is someone with nothing, absolutely nothing. You have a roof over your head. Your kids are okay. They're healthy. You have a car that works most of the time. You have a job. Stop whining. You are fine. And it just put everything into a much different perspective for me. And I didn't like the person I was becoming. So it was really, I mean, I've been so blessed through this work. And I met my husband, Cal.
Yeah.
He was a volunteer who came out, and we became friends and started dating. And he's just a wonderful, kind, caring, sweet, giving man. And he understood my passion and he worked alongside me with it.
So it's hard work. It's hard work pursuing a dream of helping people, but the benefits coming back when you serve and when you start something that is a heart-centered entrepreneurial venture, the blessing that comes back is surprising and amazing, right? I mean, you met your husband because you took the courageous step to bring those cookies down on a Saturday when no one else wanted to. And now 2 years ago, you left that organization, but you're still involved with with that, but you are working with another organization that's making a difference in Madison, a nonprofit ministry called Shelter from the Storm Ministries, and you're leading that charge. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with Shelter from the Storm?
Yeah, so Shelter from the Storm Ministries is just in Sun Prairie, just outside of Madison, and it's a transitional shelter for single moms with children under 18. And so right now we have 11 families living in the house that I'm sitting in right now. Surprisingly quiet.
I was going to say, wow, crying. They're all listening outside the door, probably.
Yeah. Usually you can hear babies crying, or toddlers. You can hear little feet on the ceiling here from upstairs. But so we have right now 21 children. We've had up to 33, I think, in the house before at once. Which was super fun during COVID when they were all stuck in their house and they're
right.
Yeah, but it's a great place. It's faith-based, and it is so I can talk about my faith and not be stepping out of what I'm supposed to be doing. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. And we have designed some awesome programs for the moms here. So a lot of the moms who come here, they've come from living in their cars or doubled or tripled up or literally sleeping outside with their kids in a bus stop or a bus, like one of the bus shelters, or staying at the overnight shelter, the emergency shelter, Salvation Army, and they get referred here. Most of them have experienced violence of some kind. I learned through my work in street outreach that 91% of the women who experience homelessness have experienced sexual assault. So they're coming from a place, wow. It's awful. And so they're coming from a place of extreme vulnerability and a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, a lot of a lot of people have let them down by the time that they've gotten to experience, be actually homeless with their children. It began just a lot like how Friends of the State Street Family began. As a matter of fact, praying about opening this shelter happened the exact same month that I started going out onto the street. In 2011. Wow. I feel like God was really moving and like pulling together, because everyone, the board is like, Tami, you've been anointed to do this. And that's such an honor to hear someone say that, but I do feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. Because, as soon as I came, we filled the house. It was only running, I think, half full before then. So we filled the house because I've seen too many people on the street, and I'm like, nope, we're going to fill up. It might be a little tight, but we're going to do it because there's people outside who have nothing. So we're going to give them a chance to come in and of course, when you put a whole bunch of people in one place who have layer upon layer upon layer of trauma, there's going to be some adjustment period for people. And there's also going to be testing. People test us, how you think about children testing their parents to see, they test us too, to see, are you going to kick us out? Do you really care about me? Yeah. Do you really care about me? Are you actually interested in what I have to say? And so we've really, we brought in a trauma therapist, and she comes and works with the moms and the kids if they want it, to do play therapy or to do talk therapy with the moms. To help them deal with that underlying trauma that brought them, that caused their homelessness in the first place, so they don't continue to maybe make the same choices that might be self-sabotaging or might derail their progress. And then we also have someone we call an opportunity coach. Her name is Janelle. She's awesome. She is like the biggest cheerleader for people. She believes, as a matter of fact, we just got on our lanyards. We believe that for the most part, everyone is doing the best they can. And she's the person who always is like, even if somebody says something rude or messes up, she's like, I think their intention was good. I don't think that that's what they meant. And so she's really been great about helping us see people in a different light. And she helps people go back to school and finish their high school diploma. We have several HSED people here, helps them get job training in MATC or at the YWCA's Empowerment Center or at Justine or at the Urban League, to train for jobs that are more career type jobs instead of hourly, like delivering pizza jobs, where they make closer to $20 an hour and have benefits so that they have an ability to support their family.
So you've been at this for 2 years, roughly, a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
I bet you're dreaming, you haven't stopped dreaming. What are you dreaming about now in the future for this organization that you're leading? What kind of dreams do you have to keep helping people and help more people? Because I know the way you work, you're never satisfied, right? There's always more people to help. So what are you dreaming about today?
Well, we did, before COVID, I had gotten a proposal approved through our board. I developed a business plan to start doing this thing called Rapid Rehousing. And it's something that's a very popular model with HUD nationwide. It's got a 90% success rate nationwide, which is huge. And it's where you put a family gets who's just recently become displaced and homeless. So they're not homeless for a real long time. Usually they're homeless because of a gap in employment or an illness or a divorce, or one of the partners is gone. It used to be a 2 household income place and they couldn't make it. And so you take those families who are displaced, and as soon as you can, when they become homeless, and you put them into an apartment. They have the lease, it's in their name, but we do the same services. So we have a case manager and our opportunity coach and our therapist will go in to their apartment and provide those same services. Meanwhile, we've gotten grant money from the county to pay $7,000 towards that rent for the first year. Just either part of their rent or maybe all of their rent when they're starting out, so they get some job training and can make more money. And so it helps, that $7,000 helps them while they get the things together they need to get together to be stabilized. And so it's like, and then once they don't need us anymore, we pull out our services and they have that apartment. And it's so nice for especially young children, because staying at a shelter, I mean, here they have their own place and their own door that locks in their own room, but it's basically like a hotel suite where there's bunk beds, a kitchenette, and they have their own bathroom. And the rooms are sizes from one mom with an infant to a mom with 7 kids. So they're all in one big room. So it's not ideal, it's a temporary place. So that living in an apartment in the same neighborhood, in the same school district that they're going to be, is so much better for them. Yeah. And you don't have to acquire expensive property and maintain property to be able to serve more families. So we just are actually signing our contract paper this week for it. We got approved to do our first 5 families. And so if by keeping it small like that, we don't have to increase our staffing, because that's something we can kind of pull those families in without increasing our expenses.
Wow.
And I'm excited to see how that works out. And then also, because of COVID, we started offering our opportunity coach services to the general public out of the library here. And so if there are people who need job training, need their car fixed so they can keep their job, need to get have some legal work taken care of, we got money from this community block grant, $35,000 to help pay for that. So so we're able to expand without actually expanding our premises, which is the biggest expense, of course, other than staffing. But we haven't had to expand our staffing yet either. So
Well,
we're
if it's
squeezing the
got,
most out. I'm squeezing the life out of every nickel I can. But I'm excited to see what God has, because our constant prayer is give us wisdom and slam the doors shut you don't want us to walk through, and
yeah,
open the ones wide that you do.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
Give
that's kind
us
of where we're at right now.
God, where it's God's will, it's God's bill too.
Yeah, that's
You're
right.
finding ways to expand. That's the other thing with entrepreneuring is like sometimes we give up. We think, well, that can't work. It's not going to work. There's always creative ways to expand that you'd probably never thought of before. So
Yeah.
as you're such a courageous lady. Now you push back on that, I'm sure. You would just tell people, I'm just an ordinary person that wants to make a difference. If I can do it, anybody else can do it, knowing your heart. Someone's listening to this and they're going, wow, she's like superhuman. I could never do that. I want to just peel away the humanness a little bit and the superhero tendency that people have looking at someone like Tami Fleming and going, oh, she's superhuman. I could never do that. And just tell people, what are some of the fears that you've had to deal with through the years in pursuing this dream that would show your mortality, your I try to help people understand that no entrepreneur is superhuman.
No, yeah, I certainly am not. I'm just a normal person. I think a lot of my fears were around money, first of all,
Mhm.
because when you have to pay the bills yourself, that's a thing. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And also, like, who do I think I am? I didn't have a master's degree in social work. I wasn't really in for a long time when I was. I actually worked at the Beacon too for the first 2 years to help them get going. That's the homeless day center downtown. And a lot of the time I was thinking, I haven't worked in social work here in the city. My only experience has been volunteer work. And I felt like I wasn't qualified, or I didn't know, without a master's degree, it's not like I know how to do therapy, or I felt like I was unqualified in a lot of ways. But then I let that go, because so many people just really connected with me on a real level. And I connected with them, and I just decided I don't have to be doing social work in that role, especially during street outreach. I just have to be present and be one of the people. I mean, we call ourselves friends of the State Street family. The State Street family are people who are living on State Street who are homeless. And I wanted to be a true friend. And say case managers of the State Street family. It just was
friends.
So,
yes.
And those, there's so much that can be done when people finally trust you, especially people who have big walls up because they've been hurt a lot.
Yeah.
When you're somebody they find trustworthy, they will open up and they will share things with you that need to be shared so they can move forward.
Yeah.
I think it was just about, pardon my French, letting shit go.
And you've surrounded yourself with a team of people even now that have those skills. Mm-hmm. Right. And so as an entrepreneur, you don't have to do it all.
No.
And it's going to take other gifts to surround you with to make it scale and expand. And you've done that. Now, switching the lane completely.
And I just say, and I have fallen flat on my face many times doing this stuff.
Yeah.
I had the mayor of Madison screaming and swearing at me and before.
Yep.
Like, oh, this
and
is
probably told that you should stay to yourself. You don't know what you're doing. I'm sure that came through loud and clear from some of our politicians as well. And yet you showed, I watched some of that engagement, and yet you showed love. You stood your ground, but you still showed love, and you were still compassionate towards the people that were telling you to stop, that it's not helping. So you just kept taking one step after the other, and so proud of you, and so glad, as hard as it was to have you leave our ministry, because you were such a spark there's that word, a spark of bright light, to see what you have done in the last 20 years is just phenomenal. But lately with your husband, Cal, you have started a new business, a new venture, called Flipping Flemings.
Those Flippin Flemings.
Those Flippin Flemings, they're always getting their hands in stuff and making it better. Darn it. They're always making things more beautiful. Those Flippin Flemings. So talk to the audience, the listeners, about what Flippin Flemings is. What the flip is Flippin Flemings about?
It's well, gosh. So Cal and I love to go. It's one of our things that we love to do together is like go to St. Vinny's and go to Habitat for Humanity's restores and go on Facebook Marketplace and garage sales and junk stores, and just look for furniture pieces that need some love. And people will actually just dump furniture off in our driveway they don't want to deal with. Yep. It's funny. All of a sudden there's furniture in my front porch. I'm like, oh. Okay.
I guess we're supposed to flip this.
But we started doing it because we had to furnish our apartment and then our house because we, don't have a ton of money for that kind of thing. And we love doing it together because he's trained as so Cal works at Meriter Hospital in the labor and delivery department as a surgical tech. And I'm doing social work but I went to school for social work, but also I have an art minor. And so he was trained as a cabinet maker. I have an art minor. We love to fix furniture up. There's something really beautiful about taking something that people are about ready to throw in the dump and making it beautiful again and being useful again. So we started doing things and trying to sell it a little bit here and there to see if anyone would be interested. And people went a little crazy for our stuff at first. We made 40 pieces for the Madison Speedway sale 2 months ago, and we sold 36 in the first 3 hours, 36 of the 40. Wow. So that was exciting and very validating, hey, maybe we could do this.
Yeah, so you tested it. You went out and you actually tested some and you found that, yep.
Yeah,
there's a market for this.
Yeah, and even if, our philosophy was we have very little money put into this because we get the stuff for next to nothing, and it's really mainly our time, that we're putting in, and it's also something that is very stress reducing for me to do that. To say, my favorite thing to do, besides seeing a piece when it's done, is to sand back all the layers or strip back all the layers of junk on wood and just to get down to the natural wood. And it's just something so satisfying about that. Yeah. And it's just beautiful, and if something's broken, Cal knows how to fix it, and make it look, make it functional and strong again, reinforce it. And it's just, it's been something to kind of de-stress actually, because, I hear a lot of really sad stuff sometimes and heartbreaking stuff. And you can't have little children come and sit on your lap in your office and have moms that you see day after day for a year come in and cry and tell you these stories and not be affected by things that affect them. Because they're, you care about them, you love them. And so it gave me something to do that was completely unrelated to what I was doing in my volunteer work and in my life and for work. And it also just was fun to kind of see people's reactions. I mean, I guess I never really, one of the things I've always struggled with is just self-esteem and thinking I can do things. And I feel like at this point, in terms of some of the work that I'm doing with people who are homeless, I feel better, like I know more after 10 years, but there's still so much I need to learn. But doing the furniture flipping. I mean, it's kind of like making a piece of art and putting it out there and waiting for people to critique it.
Yeah.
A little nerve-wracking.
Put my baby
Are
out
they gonna
there.
think it's ugly? Do I have bad taste or good taste? I always thought I had okay taste. I mean, but and my friends probably would just say something nice anyway. So you just, when you put it out there, you get honest feedback.
Yep.
People aren't shy to say things online. So, and we were really surprised that they were, pleasantly surprised that they were good. And Cal would really like to retire from working those 12-hour days, standing on his feet all day. He's just turned 64. So next year he'd like to retire, and this is something that we can do together, and he can do more full-time, or when he's retired, as he wants to, instead of having all that have to.
So what passion do you have? What skill set do you have that if you focused on it a little bit and tested it a little bit could be a source of income for you, a source of livelihood for you? Sometimes we bury our skills under and bury our passions under the need to make a living doing something maybe we would rather not do. And that's where dreams can come from too, is looking at those skills and those passions that you have that maybe have been languishing or buried. And you, like the furniture, you just strip it away and you go, I really love this. And you guys can do it together. It's a partnership, which is also really cool. So maybe there's a marriage listening to this and they're like, what could we do together? As we wrap this up, I want to ask you to speak directly to the listeners right now. What would you like to tell them? What advice would you like to give to them? Or word of encouragement is better than advice. Would you like to give them, for those who are sitting here thinking they've got a heart-centered dream to help somebody in something they love to do and make a living doing it, and they're afraid, or they're hesitant, or they think it's not going to work out, or who am I to try this? What would you like to say to them?
Well, who you are is a child of God. And gosh, God has given each of us something to do to make the world better, something within us. And it's our job to find out what that is and just do it. Just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You've helped somebody. There's really no downside, just as long as you make sound decisions in terms of safety and practicality, and you have boundaries with your budgeting and what you're able to do. I think that you should try it and see if you feel completely energized afterwards. That's your thing. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And just pray before you go out that God will open the doors wide if it's where he wants you to go, and then he'll slam them shut if it's not.
Yep.
He doesn't want you to waste your time either.
Yeah.
God is a loving God, and he loves you, and you are his child. You're a child of the King. So don't let people tell you that you can't do it. You do not have to be wealthy or perfect or have a Ph.D. to be able to do something really meaningful in the world, or really meaningful in the life of another person.
Yeah. Thank you, Tami. I want to give people an opportunity to connect with you, to find out more about what you're doing. How would they find out about Flippin Flemings? How would they find out about Shelter from the Storm or Friends of State Street Family? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, Those Flippin Flemings, it's Those Flippin Flemings is on Facebook. We don't really have a website or anything because we're pretty new. There's actually a meeting with a store tomorrow that might be carrying our things in Madison.
Nice.
Actually. Yeah. So again, another God thing. It's not something that we planned out. And then if you want to reach out to Shelter from the Storm Ministries, it's www.sftsm shelterfromthestormministries.com. or .org, I'm sorry. And Friends of the State Street Family is actually www.friendsofthestatestreetfamily.org. And you can plug into any of those ministries or just find out more about it. There are practical ways that people can be involved in both of those ministries, if that's something that God's leading you to do.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking your lunchtime, I'm assuming, to talk with me and to share your story. I hope that someone's encouraged today. And I'm so sorry that my phone keeps ringing. I'm going to say goodbye before, I think it's my brother-in-law trying to get a hold of me. I need to just tell him not to call. Thank you so much for being on. And it was so great to reconnect with you. Blessings on all that you're doing, Tami.
Thank you, Jeff. And much love to Amy and the girls. And the grandbabies.
Yeah, the grandbabies. 4 of them. It's amazing.
Wow, that's great.
Have an awesome day.
You too. Bye.
Hey, fellow dreamer. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Head over to my website, jeffmeyer.org, for all of the show notes and links. And when you're ready to move from overthinking about your dream to actually taking action on it, consider joining the Dream Accelerator community. Our clients are getting crystal clear on their dream with our Dream Generator Vivid Description 5-step process. They're discovering the truth about fear and how to use it as fuel to take courageous steps in the right direction. And most importantly, they are walking a clear path forward because they have made an investment in themselves to confidently realize their dreams. The results are so inspiring. Having coaching and companions on the dream journey is crucial. Remember, fear will come, fear will stay. Move forward anyway.